discover how a tiny beacon transformed the lives of lost puppy Ginger and her papa at sea. The storm churned ominously over the quaint coastal town, dark clouds casting a shadow over the pier where David, a hard-working single father and proud veteran, prepped for another long day at sea. The salty air filled with the sharp cries of seagulls mixed with the crashing surf, but felt heavier this day, as the burden of bills loomed over his heart. At 38, Date fought to provide for a 10-year-old daughter, Emma, an unstoppable force of joy and determination. But, with each passing day, her laughter echoed less in their worn-down house, filled instead with the ringing silence of a father too consumed by survival. When a sudden squall boomed across the skies, David's thoughts turned grim. He'd spent too many hours on the fishing boat, chasing shadows of a better life, while Emma felt neglected, isolated in her own home. It pained him to see her face clouded with frustration each time he came home late, too tired to play or talk. Just as he resolved to make things right, destiny intervened. Drenched and trembling, a tiny puppy washed ashore, her fur matted and shivering. David didn't hesitate. He rushed to her side, heart swelling with a sudden warmth that cut through his worries like a knife. He named her Ginger. The moment he brought her home, everything changed. Laughter filled the corners of their house once more, barks replacing the echoes of silence. And for a brief time, David felt like a hero again. Emma lit up at the sight of Ginger, and for the first time in what felt like ages, they became a family again, a team. They played fetch at the beach, shared secrets under the stars, and David felt the heaviness in his chest lift, if just for a while. But as days turned into weeks, David's determination to fix their aging fishing boat pulled him back into the depths of work. Emma, despite her bright spirit, started to feel abandoned again, their bond slowly unraveling amidst the pressures of life. "Dad, can't we just go out together one day?" she pleaded one night, frustration etched into her small face. "I promise, Em, just a little longer," he replied, but his heart sank. They were growing apart, and it shattered him. In desperation, David concocted a plan: an entire day at sea, just them, a chance to reconnect. As they set out, the wind danced above their boat, and utter joy filled Emma's cheeks. But fate, cruelly, had other plans. The engines sputtered and died, and waves towered like mountains around them, engulfing the boat in fearsome strength. "Hold on, Emma," David yelled. Heart raced, and it felt as if the storm roared with their unspoken anger, threatening to maim their relationship and haunt them forever. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. With cracks of lightning splitting the sky, David clung to Emma, despair threading through his heart. The storm mirrored their unvoiced worries, amplifying every struggle. Then, amidst the chaos, little Ginger stepped forward. Despite her size, her instinct to survive shone brightly. As the storm raged, she found the beacon light on board. Its glow pierced through the darkness, guiding David and Emma back to safety. In that blinding flash of light, Clarity struck harder than the rain. They would survive this storm, but would they survive the emotional one brewing beneath? Would this near-fatal experience become their turning point, their chance to stitch together the fragments of their lives? With hearts pounding and fear lingering, they clung to hope, searching for a way to mend not just a boat, but their bond. As the storm began to calm, the question lingered, could a tiny beacon save them both, far beyond the sea? David's grip tightened around the boat's railing as a surge of waves crashed against their small vessel. Rain battered down, relentlessly, the cold droplets stinging like tiny needles. He could feel fear creeping into his bones, clawing at the edges of his resolve. But as he glanced down at Emma, eyes wide and filled with terror, a new determination ignited within him. "Stay close, Em," he shouted above the roar of the storm, his voice barely cutting through the chaos surrounding them. Ginger, who had been curled tightly at Emma's feet, suddenly sprang up, barking defiantly at the howling wind. In that moment, David saw something that sparked a long-forgotten ember of hope. Ginger was scared, yes, but she wasn't backing down. Perhaps they too could stand tall against this tempest. As he scanned their surroundings, the flickering beacon light Ginger had found it and now cast an encouraging glow, illuminating the wild, dark waves. The little puppy's body seemed to fill the darkness with warmth, like a lighthouse guiding lost sailors home. David took a deep breath, allowing the steady rhythm of hope to anchor him against the storm. "Okay, Emma, we need to trust each other," he said, his voice steadying. "We're going to keep this light with us, and we're going to get through this." Together, they moved toward the cockpit, bracing against the violent lurches of the boat. David pulled Emma close, taking the beacon from Ginger, which seemed to know its purpose. It pulsed with energy, and David felt a surge of courage wash over him. "Can you hold this for me, Em?" he asked, directing her to keep the light steady while he fought with the controls, desperately trying to restart the engine. Emma nodded, her small hands gripping the beacon tightly. Its light shone more brightly as she focused. "I think I see something ahead, Dad," she cried out. "It looks like land." David squinted through the rain, heart pounding. Through the flickering light and heavy rain, he could just make out a silhouetted jagged edge of the coastline against the darkened skies. Hope surged into him like the tide, fueling his efforts. "Hold on tight," he shouted, easing the throttle once more. In that moment, the engine roared back to life, returning a flicker of power just as a gust of wind whipped across the bow. With his heart racing, David steered toward the distant shore. Ginger barked joyously, a brave little voice in the wild storm. Together, they fought against the waves, each breath drawing them closer to safety, closer to each other. As they neared the shore, the storms began to settle, surrendering their wrath to the gentle caress of the ocean. Waves still crashed, but the shoreline appeared less daunting, a comforting embrace waiting to welcome them home. Just as they reached the sandy edge, the boat slid against a pile of rocks, halting their frantic escape. They were Safi. David let out a breath he'd been holding, laughter bubbling up amidst the relief. Emma and Ginger jumped from the boat, tears of joy mixing with the rain-soaked smiles. "Dad, we did it. We really did it," Emma exclaimed, her laughter ringing above the playful splashes of water. David engulfed her in his arms, the gravity of the moment striking deep. "We did, Em. But maybe it's time we start facing the storms together. Huh!" As they stood there, the sun began to peek through the clouds, casting a golden hue over the shore. But even as warmth enveloped them, David felt an ache in his chest. They'd survived the tempest, but would the lingering storm in his heart dissolve with time? Time would tell. As they walked back towards town, hand in hand with Ginger bouncing along, a quiet whisper tugged in David's mind. Was this storm merely the beginning of a journey to truly heal their fractured bond? The heavy clouds loomed only a distance behind them, but would shadows of the past try to catch up? The trio stumbled onto the shore, the salty air mingling with the fresh scent of rain. David couldn't shake the weight pressing on his heart, but the sight of Emma's smiling face bathed in sunlight helped ease his burden. She looked like a flower, blooming after a storm, her spirit resilient against the odds. "Look, Dad, the lighthouse." Emma pointed excitedly toward a weathered stone structure standing tall on the cliffs. Its light flickering softly, a contrasting calm against the chaos of the sea they had just conquered. "Yes, let's go check it out," David replied, his heart lifting a little more. Emma skipped ahead, Ginger racing around her feet, a bundle of raw energy. As they approached the lighthouse, David couldn't help but think of the times they'd talked about visiting this place, but never had the chance. So many plans dashed against the rocks of their past. But today felt different, like they were granted a fresh start, a chance to rewrite their story. Inside the lighthouse, damp air welcomed them. Dust motes danced in shimmering shafts of gold, illuminating the spiral staircase that twisted its way up. David placed a hand on Emma's shoulder. "Want to climb to the top?" "Absolutely." Emma beamed, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Up they went, the steps creaking beneath them as if sharing stories of sailors from years gone by. Each turn revealed more of the expansive coastline, and soon they reached the top, breathless from both the climb and the view. "Whoa!" Emma exclaimed, her eyes wide as she took in the sight of the endless ocean meeting the horizon. "Look at those waves, Dad." "Yeah, they're powerful, just like us," David said, pride swelling in his chest. "But we faced them and came out all right." A moment of silence enveloped them, the magnitude of their journey seeming to settle in. Emma leaned against the railing, excitement giving way to thoughtfulness. "Do you think we'll be okay now?" David paused, searching for the right words. "I think we'll always have storms, but as long as we're together, we can get through anything." Tears pricked at Emma's eyes, but she quickly wiped them away. "I'm glad we have each other." Overwhelmed by emotion, David pulled her close, resting his chin atop her head. "Me too, more than you know," Ginger yipped, breaking the moment, dancing in circles as if to say that everything was just fine. As they descended the stairs, David felt a shift within himself. Maybe they were still in the beginning stages of healing, but they had each other's backs now. One step at a time, one storm at a time. When they reached the bottom, the sun fully emerged, casting vibrant colors across the horizon. David grabbed Emma's hand and they walked back toward the beach, ready to bask in their newfound freedom. As they stepped onto the sand, a rumbling noise interrupted their joy. David turned to see a dark plume rising in the distance over the ocean. His heart dropped. Was it another storm? "Dad," Emma's voice trembled slightly. "What is that?" "Just stay close, Em," he responded, his voice steadied by the resolve that had carried them this far. But unease lingered in the air. What lay ahead could be another storm or something entirely unexpected. David squinted into the distance. the dark plume expanding against the backdrop of pale blue sky. The air felt thick around them, a tangible shroud of uncertainty. Ginger whined softly, her instinct keen, sensing the tension rising in her human's chest. "What do you think it is?" Emma asked, her eyes wide, flitting nervously between the horizon and her father's face. "I don't know, sweetheart. But let's move back a bit just in case," David replied, tugging gently on Emma's hand. Instinct told him to protect her. As they made their way back up the beach, the sound of crashing waves seemed to distort, echoing ominously. It felt like nature itself had turned ominous. David couldn't shake the feeling that whatever was coming, they would need to confront it together. "Do you think it's a storm?" Emma's voice was small, almost lost amidst the roar of the ocean. "Could be," he said, keeping his gaze on the horizon. "But if it is, we'll find a way to stay safe." He glanced down at her, meeting her questioning gaze. "We'll face it together, right?" "Right," Emma affirmed, her little fist pumping the air, a brave but ungrounded gesture that brought a smile to David's lips. He needed that reminder. Even in the dark, they had a light between them, hope. As they settled a bit farther from the shoreline, clouds began to swirl ominously over the sea. The sun's rays flickered, almost as if bidding farewell. David's heart raced. Time was slipping away. They needed to be vigilant. Emma sat down on the warm sand, her eyes never leaving the churning waves. "Look at how the water changes color," she exclaimed, pointing. "It's like it's angry." "Yeah, the ocean is powerful," he replied, his voice calmer than he felt. "Just like us." For a brief moment, they shared a silence, observing the raw beauty of the ocean turning chaotic. A hint of something unsettled David. A knowing that sometimes storms don't just bring rain and wine, sometimes they bring change. Suddenly, the plume of smoke shifted, revealing itself. Was it a boat? No, it looked more like a small dock, bobbing on the waves. David's breath caught. It seemed battered, a relic adrift in the tumult. The fear clenching at his heart was replaced by curiosity. Just where had this come from? "Can we go see it, Dad?" Emma's voice broke through his thoughts. "I don't think that's safe right now," he replied, keeping his eyes focused on the mysterious object. "But it's definitely something we should check out later." A plan formed in his mind, a spark igniting within the uncertainty. Realizing the significance of that dock, the potential for discovery, it struck him. Just then, a sharp cry caught their attention. A figure loomed close to the wreckage on the dock, small and frantic. David's heart pounded. It was hard to see clearly, but the figure seemed to be waving. "Look, Em," he shouted, pointing. "Someone might need help." Emma jumped up, her earlier fear quickly turning into excitement. "Can we help them, Dad? We have to." He hesitated, weighing the dangers against their inherent compassion. "Okay, let's go, but we stick together." As they raced down the beach toward the dock, a mix of fear and exhilaration churned in David's chest. For what lay ahead might just reshape their journey. But as they neared, the reality of the situation blossomed into view, and David felt that weight returning, heavier this time. What they were about to discover could change everything. What had they stumbled upon? David's heart raced as they approached the battered dock. The figure, now more defined against the shadowy mass of wood and roiling water. A woman, drenched and shivering, stood fumbling with something that gleamed in her hands. The chaos of the ocean seemed to dull, momentarily, as if the world had hushed to give way for this strange encounter. "Emma, stay close," he murmured, a sense of urgency threading through his words. He kept an arm around her shoulders as they moved closer, the sand crunching underfoot. The wind whipped through their hair, but it did nothing to dispel the chill of the unknown. "Help!" The woman shouted, her voice break through the sound. "Crème, please, halt on." David shouted back, his instincts kicking in. "We're coming." Ginger, by his side, began to bark, sensing the distress. David's mind raced through possibilities. Was she lost? Had she been on the boat? His gaze darted between Emma and the woman, whose face was twisted with fear and desperation. "We need to pull her out," Emma said, eyes wide. There was a fierce determination in her tone that reminded David of himself, a courageous spark, undimmed by uncertainty. "All right, let's see what we can do," he replied, resisting the impulse to sweep Emma behind him. He needed her to see what bravery looked like, even in the face of fear. "Stay back, but keep watching, okay?" Emma nodded, her small hands clenched in soft fists. David quickened his pace, his heart thundering as they reached the dock. The woman was huddled against a wooden beam, and her soaked clothes clung to her in the wind. "Are you hurt?" David asked, crouching close to her. "I know," she gasped, struggling to find control in her breathing. "But I need to get back to my puppy. He's on the other side." "Your puppy?" Emma's eyes widened, excitement and concern battling for dominance on her face. "Where is he?" "Just across the beach." The woman motioned weakly towards the direction of the distant shoreline. He got caught when the waves took my boat. I was trying to find him." The urgency in her words ignited a fire in David. "Emma, stay with her," he commanded, suddenly aware of the emotional vortex swirling around them. The sight of the woman's fear mirrored his own for his daughter, and he refused to let those feelings overwhelm his better judgment. "Where is he?" he asked the woman, strong resolve pushing him onward. "Near the rocks, but I don't know if he'll make it." Her voice trailed off as she stared wide-eyed toward the beach, lost in her sorrow. "Stay put," David told her firmly. "I'll get your dog." "I promise." He turned quickly on his heels, feeling Emma's worried gaze on his back. "Dad, be careful." Emma called, but his mind was already set on the task at hand. With every step toward the rocks, David's heart pounded. This wasn't just about rescuing a puppy. It was a race against time, against the mounting tempest. Waves crashed around him, each one threatening to pull him back, but he forced himself to push forward. "Come on, little buddy," he whispered, his own fear hidden beneath layers of adrenaline and determination. As he neared the jagged rocks, a low whine reached his ears, sharp and clear above the din of the ocean. David almost slipped but caught himself, squinting into the haze of spray and foam. Could it be the storm-battered pup? There it was, a small figure, soaked but alive, trembling and trapped beneath the ledge. David's breath caught as he recognized the little dog's frantic movements. He reached down, chest tight with relief and urgency. "Hang on, I'm coming," he shouted, ignoring the icy water splashing against him. He leaned deeper, stretching as far as he could, his heart pounding in his ears. But just as he was about to grab the dog, the ground shifted beneath him. Would he lose his footing? Was this how the storm overwhelmed them all? Would the bond forged in fear and love be snatched away in an instant? "Hold on!" he yelled again, desperate and determined. What would happen next? Would he succeed in saving the little pup, or would the storm claim them all? David felt the rough edge of the rocks digging into his palms as he steadied himself. The waves crashed relentlessly, splashing icy water onto his skin, but he was undeterred. The whimpering had grown more frantic, and each sob of the little dog twisted something deep inside him. He couldn't just stand there. He had to act. "Come on, buddy," he whispered more to himself than to the puppy. "I'm right here." He could see the little pup's wide, terrified eyes glistening in the murky light, the creature quivering with cold and fear. David could almost feel the echoes of his own childhood fears surfacing lost in dark waters, hoping someone would come to save him. Now, that puppy was looking straight into his soul, a call for help as profound as any he had ever known. Raising an arm, David reached out toward the pup. Just a little closer. But the rocks shifted again, debris tumbling down as another wave pulled at the shoreline. David felt a rush of panic. He couldn't let this moment slip away. With a burst of adrenaline, he lunged forward, fingers brushing against the dog's soaked fur. "Gotcha!" he shouted, grabbing the scruff of its neck just as a powerful surge knocked him sideways. Water roared around him, but he steadied himself against the rock, yanking the puppy toward him. Every breath was a battle against the spray and the chaos. But he pulled that tiny creature close to his chest, wrapping it in the warmth of his arms. "David," he heard Emma, a voice far away, a blend of worry and relief. Surviving the tumultuous waves, he turned back his heart, lifting slightly. He had saved the puppy, but now he had to think of getting back safely. Emma and the woman stared wide-eyed from a distance, fear mingling with hope. He could feel the puppy's little heart racing against his own, a pulse of life in a moment filled with turmoil. Holding it tight, he began to make his way back through the treacherous rocks. But the ocean was relentless. A wave crashed into him, forcing him to stumble, and he felt himself losing balance. Desperation seeped in. Would he be able to hold on? "Dad!" Emma shouted, her small voice cutting through the chaos like a lighthouse in the storm. The fear in her call pushed him forward. He couldn't let her down. He surged against the water, eyes locked on the dock, where Emma stood with the woman, hope radiating from their faces. Every ounce of strength coursed through him, fueled by his family's love and the little dog in his arms. With a final push, he broke free from the grasp of the waves, scrambling onto the dock. Gasping, David collapsed, cradling the puppy in his lap. It shivered against him, but he could feel its breath starting to calm, even as his own heart raced wildly. "Dad, you did it!" Emma exclaimed, rushing forward with wonder and relief, the woman following close behind, tears glistening in her eyes. "I couldn't leave him," David said, smiling down at the soggy puppy, now curled against him. "He needed me, just like you do." Relief flooded through them all, joy threading through the turmoil that had defined the night. Yet as they closed in, the woman sniffled, her hands shaking. "Thank you. I thought I lost him forever." But David's heart tugged. They were still surrounded by stormy waves. The night wasn't over. The puppy was safe, but what about the woman? The weight of her fear still rested heavily in the air. He looked at Emma and then back at her, a resolute determination building within him. "Let's find a way to help you, too," he said. Feeling a flicker of pride for the family he had forged through this chaotic moment, But would the storm allow them that chance? Did more challenges await just around the bend? The puppy nestled into David's lap, its little body still trembling. But warmth was seeping in where fear had once reigned. David stroked its fur gently, whispering shushing sounds, as if coaxing away the remnants of terror. Emma hovered nearby, her small hands on her hips, a blend of concern and admiration etched into her features. "You really saved him, Dad," she said, her voice a soft reverence. The woman rushed to his side, gratitude spilling over. "I can't believe you went out there. You were incredible." Her eyes shimmered with tears that mingled with the rain still falling around them. Yet, she wore a mask of worry that refused to fade. "Where's Ginger's collar?" she asked, scanning the ground in desperation. It must have come off in the water. David's stomach tightened. The thought of that collar so tied to the dog's home and the woman's heart being lost in the turbulent depths felt like another rescue mission. Without it, they might not be able to trace her back to where she belonged. "Let's look," he said, getting up slowly and shifting the puppy into Emma's arms. She cradled it carefully, a protective instinct kicking in, as if she knew this little creature had become part of their story. The area was chaotic, water pooled in uneven patches, combined with slick rocks and scattered debris. David stepped cautiously, his heart racing not just from the exertion but also the urgency of the moment. Each step felt fraught, the storm still howling around them. The woman pointed toward a spot near the water's edge, hope shining in her eyes. "It has a little charm on it that says Ginger." David squinted into the gray, his heart wrestling against despair. He scanned the shoreline, searching every nook and cranny. As he pushed forward, a wave rolled in, reaffirming its power, but he persisted, digging through the sand and stones. "Please," he murmured, almost to himself. Emma kept the puppy close, whispering soft reassurances while watching her dad in the distance. David could feel the pressure mounting, tightening like a vice around his chest. The little dog had already been through so much. Losing its name tag would almost be an insult to its resilience. Then, something caught his eye, a glimmer of silver, half buried in the sand. He rushed toward it, heart pounding, and dug away the sand to reveal a small, familiar shape. It was the collar, the inscription faint but clear, Ginger. Relief poured through him as he held it aloft, triumph flooding his veins. He turned back a smile, breaking across his face, and the woman erupted into tears, wiping her eyes as she reached for her beloved dog's collar. "You found it." Her voice trembled, barely holding joy and disbelief together. David approached, collaring hunt, but something in the woman's expression shifted. It was more than relief. It was a connection. "This means everything." "Thank you," she said, eyes glistening with something deeper than gratitude. "I couldn't let her down," David replied softly, but the words felt more significant. As they all gathered closer, a love between humans and animals lingered in the air, thick and warm against the swirling storm. David felt it, a bond forged through fear and loss, emerging into something beautiful. "Where do you live?" he asked, looking between her and Emma. "Just up the coast," she answered, her smile blooming as hope filled her voice. "We would love to have you over for coffee. To thank you properly. Maybe Ginger could come over to play with our dog." Emma chimed in, her enthusiasm brightening the atmosphere. As they exchanged plans, the storm seemed to lessen, a promise lingering in the skies. David felt like possibilities were forming, new pathways unfolding in the midst of all the chaos. They stood united by the strength of one small creature and the resolve it had awakened within them. But just as David found warmth in this new friendship, an ominous rumble echoed from the ocean, the waves surging with renewed vigor. The wind howled, raging against their newfound hope. "What was that?" Emma asked, her expression shifting back to alarm. David turned, mind racing. "That sounds like trouble, again. We need to be careful." As he looked to the sea, a sense of foreboding loomed. Were they truly safe now, or was this only the beginning? The wind whipped through David's hair as he squinted against the rain, straining to hear over the din of crashing waves. The puppy, now safely cradled in Emma's arms, had settled into a stillness, warmth radiating from its tiny frame. Somehow, it felt like a signal of hope amidst the brewing chaos. "Dad, I don't like that sound." "It feels like something bad is coming," Emma whispered, her eyes wide with unease. "I know, sweetheart. Just stay close to me," David replied, his voice steady, even as uncertainty curled in his stomach. He gazed out at the churning sea. The waves that had held such beauty moments ago now crashed violently, dark and threatening. The woman Ginger's owner stood a few feet away, trembling, not from the cold but from a mix of relief and fear. "We should head back." "The storm's getting worse," she said, glancing apprehensively at the water that seemed to swell angrily. David nodded, realizing they needed to retreat to higher ground. But he couldn't shake the sense that the storm wasn't just about the weather. It felt like an omen, a sign that something deeper was at stake. Gathering the courage, he called out, "Let's go. Stay together." They moved quickly, David leading the way with Emma close behind him, clutching the puppy. The woman followed, her worry palpable in the way she stumbled slightly. Her eyes darting between the raging sea and her dog, Ginger, now resting safely in Emma's embrace. As they reached a small, elevated ispochi, the wind howled violently, almost drowning out David's voice. "We should wait here until it calms." He shouted over the noise, but just as his words left his lips, a massive wave crashed against the rocky shore, sending a spray of salt water flying into the air. It was like a wild beast, revealing its might. Emma gasped, instinctively tightening her grip on the puppy. Tears glimmered in her eyes as she looked up at her dad. "What if it gets worse? What if we don't get back?" David felt his heart ache at her fear. He wanted to chase away those shadows, to promise her safety, but the tempest surrounding them made every promise feel fragile. "We'll get home, Em. I promise. Just hold tight. We're in this together." Beside him, the woman clasped her hands, eyes fixed on Ginger. "I'm so grateful for what you did. I can't imagine what I'd do without her," she said, her voice steady despite the storm. "Ginger is a brave little pup," David replied, offering a smile, trying to lift the weight that hung in the air. "But let's not forget, it was a team effort." Suddenly, the ominous rumbling from the ocean intensified. Something was happening, something more than a storm. Gritting his teeth against rising panic, David looked out, and his instincts kicked in. "We need to." Without warning, a lightning bolt sliced through the sky, illuminating the chaotic landscape, accompanied by a deafening crack of thunder. The moment felt frozen. Time almost stood still. David caught a flash of movement amongst the waves, a flash of fur struggling against the currents. Is that? Emma pointed, her tiny finger trembling with fear. Ginger. The woman gasped, her voice rising above the wind like a desperate prayer. Before David could process what he was seeing, he felt the spark of instinct. He couldn't let her go back in there. Stay here. He shouted, beginning to move, heart pounding. I'll get her. Dad, no, Emma cried, grip tightening around the puppy. But David couldn't stop now. He plunged forward, determination flooding his veins. The storm may have wanted to reclaim them, but he wouldn't let it. Not again. As he fought through the surf, darkness loomed, threatening to swallow him whole. In that split second, with the storm roiling around him, he understood one thing: it wasn't just about rescuing a puppy anymore. It was about confronting a tidal wave of fears and finding light amidst the shadows. Would he be strong enough to bring Ginger back? The reality was crashing in, and now the choice wasn't merely for survival, but for hope. David plunged deeper into the water, the icy waves crashing against him with relentless force. Every stride felt like a battle, the currents clawing at his legs as if trying to pull him down. He could hear Emma's cries, muffled by the raging storm, but he focused on the task ahead. Ginger was out there, fighting for her life, and Ickfierns. Ginger! He shouted, his voice choked with desperation. Each roar of thunder seemed to echo his name, a reminder that time was slipping away. The sea swirled around him, dark and unfriendly, but he refused to let the storm sweep him away. The splash of water soaked him to the bone, and he felt the weight of it dragging him down. He had to keep moving. With a fierce determination, he pushed against the tide, straining his eyes to catch a glimpse of the tiny dog. Where was she? As he finally broke free of the turbulent waves, he spotted a flicker of movement ahead. There she was, a small, struggling figure amidst the tumult, paws flailing as the water threatened to close over her. Hang on, Ginger, I'm coming. David's heart raced. He swam harder, the sting of salt in his mouth, mixing with the adrenaline coursing through his veins. The world around him became a blur of grey, the storm drowning out every rational thought. All that mattered was the little pup fighting against the current and the bond that drew him forward. He propelled himself with all his might, reaching out as he neared her. Ginger's fur was soaked, her little body shivering violently. The moment David finally grasped her, she let out a whimper, eyes wide with fear but filled with recognition. I've got you. I've got you, he whispered as he clutched her tightly against his chest, hoping to shield her from the storm. He turned, battling the waves that tried to drag him under as he fought to return to Emma and the woman. Just when he thought he was making progress, the sea betrayed him. A wave, larger than the rest, crashed against him, plunging them both underwater. He gasped, panicking for a moment, wrestling with the water that wanted to engulf them. No, not now. With instinct taking over, he kicked harder, using every ounce of strength he had left. He felt Ginger trembling, and somehow that tiny weight reminded him of his purpose. Emerging from the water, he gulped in precious air and steadied himself. David could see the rocky outcrop where Emma and the woman waited, their faces etched with concern. He pushed forward, the ache in his limbs burning but fueled by the urgency of the moment. Finally, he reached solid ground, stumbling onto the rock formation, nearly collapsing as he set Ginger down. The little pup shook, but she looked up at him with a mix of gratitude and trust, her tail wagging slightly despite the conditions. "Dad!" Emma cried, tears spilling down her cheeks as she rushed to him. "I'm okay, sweetheart. We made it," he panted, pulling her close, looking at Ginger, who now had the woman rushing to scoop her into her arms. "Thank you. Thank you so much," she choked out, her breath hitched with relief. David nodded, a surge of emotion overwhelming him. They were Safi, but the storm's howls were still present, and around them the chaos hadn't ceased. Droplets of rain mixed with tears on Emma's face as she hugged him tightly, and he felt the pressing weight of survival in this moment. But as the wind howled again, David sensed something was lingering, something that felt far from over. He turned, eyes scanning the sea now, awash with shadows. "Stay close," he ordered, not wanting to let fear creep back in, but a lingering doubt gnawed at his insides. What more could the storm take from them? As David caught his breath, a flicker of movement beyond the churning waters caught his eye. Another shape. Something more significant, rising and falling in rhythm with the waves. He squinted, dread sinking in, the storm threatening not just their unity, but the very fabric of their lives. What else was lurking in the dark waters? The question hung in the air, sending shivers down his spine as he tried to protect the fragile hope they had just clung to. The storm had transformed the world around them, but it hadn't crushed their spirit. David caught his breath as he held Emma tightly, their hearts racing together, sharing a moment that defied the chaos. Ginger, nestled in the woman's arms, began to settle, her tail wagging ever so slightly, a sign of hope amidst the storm's clutches. "We need to find shelter," David said, trying to push away the lingering dread. They needed to regroup and gather strength. He looked around, his eyes searching for something, anything that could provide refuge. "Over there." Emma pointed, excitement breaking through the clouds of worry. "The old boathouse. We can go there." "Let's move, then," David replied, casting one last glance at the dark, swirling ocean. Whatever else the storm had to give, he was done waiting for it to come to them. Together, they hurried towards the boathouse, hand in hand, the woman following closely behind. As they reached the sturdy door, David pushed it open, the wood creaking in protest. Inside, the air was warm and slightly musty, a refuge against the raging storm outside. The flickering light of a single bulb cast soft shadows, calming their frayed nerves. David couldn't shake the feeling that they had faced not just the physical storm, but something much deeper, a storm that challenged their bonds. Turning to Emma, he knelt to her level. "We made it through that together," he said, emotion thick in his voice. "You were so brave, Em, and so was Ginger." Emma nodded, her eyes shining with tears. "But what if there are more storms?" David hesitated, searching for words. "There will always be storms, but we'll always have each other. Together, we can weather anything." The woman joined them, her own relief palpable as she sank onto the nearest crate. "And we can help each other. Thank you for saving Ginger." "I don't think I would have made it through without you both," she said, emotion cracking her voice like an egg. David felt warmth blossom in his chest. "It's what we do. Family helps one another." The little puppy, now wrapped in a towel, playfully wagged its tail, its spirit unbroken even after the ordeal. They shared smiles, a moment of connection filling the air as the storm continued to roar outside. It felt like the first light of dawn peeking through a long, dark night. Suddenly, an idea sparked within David, what if we make this boathouse our base? We could fix it up, create something beautiful together. Emma's eyes widened. Really, Dad, can we? He nodded, feeling the weight of his promise to her and to himself. Yes, we can turn it into a safe place, filled with laughter and memories. Just like how we'll keep growing through every storm. The woman looked at him, her eyes shining with hope. I'd love to help. If you're willing, I think we could turn this place into a refuge for others too. There are many who get lost in storms, lost but not broken. David felt a swell of purpose deep within. Yes, this would be their transformation. Their journey wouldn't just end with survival. It would begin anew here, with each of them carrying the lessons of their trials into the future. I love that idea. Emma beamed, the weight of her earlier fear lifting like mist in the morning sun. A place for everyone. As they began discussing plans, the storm gradually began to fade outside, the chaos settling into a soft rhythm. The skies were clearing, and rays of sunshine began to break through the clouds, casting golden beams over the water. The world mirrored their transformations, shifting from chaos to calm. Together, we can face anything, David concluded, his heart swelling with love and determination. And from now on, we'll shine brighter than any storm. In that moment, they knew they had weathered far, more than just a tempest. They had reclaimed their bond, found friends in unexpected places, and forged a future full of hope. As they left the boathouse, hand in hand, David glanced back at the fading storm clouds. They were no longer just remnants of struggle. They were symbols of renewal. He smiled, envisioning all that lay ahead, the laughter, the challenges, the triumphs. With hearts united, they stepped forward into the sunshine, ready to embrace whatever came next. You need to subscribe now to catch the next incredible journey and witness more heartwarming transformations. This is the moment to show your support. Hit that like button right now to help us reach more amazing viewers like you. Don't keep your thoughts to yourself. Comment your reactions and feelings about this amazing conclusion. And don't wait, not even one more second, to share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. The power to uplift others is in your hands.